Welcome to the Commercial Property Podcast. My name is Susie Carter. I am a chartered surveyor. I've been involved in commercial property in the UK for 30 years and I've done hundreds of commercial property deals. I'm here to be your guide through the commercial property market, whether you're an experienced investor or whether you're literally thinking about dipping your toe in the world of commercial real estate. I will be here talking to you about all kinds of things commercial real estate in the UK, and I've also got some fantastic guest experts who are joining me. So please do subscribe if you'd like to follow, and if you'd like any more help or information on commercial real estate, please do click www.susiecarter.com, which is my website, and you can find out all the ways I can help you. So stay tuned for this week's episode. So welcome back, everyone. I'm here today with the fabulous Sam Cooke of Blue Bricks magazine. Hi, Sam.
Hi, Susie. Nice to see you. Looking forward to this one.
Great. Yeah, thanks for coming along. And I have to say, this is take two for Sam and I, because we recorded it and then it didn't record for some reason. So we're here again, and it's going to be just as wonderful as the first time we recorded it. So, Sam, would you like to give us a little bit of an introduction into yourself and into Blue Bricks as well?
Yeah, no, I'm going to have to try and remember the best bits from the last time we recorded it now so I can repeat them. Yeah, so my name's Sam Cooke. I'm the owner of Blue Bricks magazine. Basically, quick introduction to myself. I started working for Blue Bricks magazine back in 2021 as a marketing manager of Blue Bricks magazine. When I was working for Blue Bricks, I didn't realise it was private equity owned. So that meant a private equity firm had shares in the business. So I sort of quickly went from working as a market manager for Blue Bricks to working for that firm as an investment analyst, helping them to buy businesses, analyze businesses that were suitable for acquisition, value those businesses, all those sorts of things. And fast forward a little bit of time from doing that, I ended up buying Blue Bricks magazine off the firm using some of the lessons that they taught me there. And then before that, a bit of history in properties, an estate agent and a property sourcer. So that's the kind of roundabout story really. That was 3 years ago. I bought Blue Bricks and grown it from there from a relatively unknown brand to one of the most well-known publishing brands in the UK for property investment. Also have a team around me now. So I used to be doing everything in the business. Now I've got a full-time marketing manager. I've replaced myself as the editor, so I'm no longer putting the magazine together. And my job is more to think of ideas to make my team even busier.
Excellent. Yeah, that's where we all like to get to. And in terms of the range of people that you speak to at Blue Bricks, because I know you kind of do it very interview led, Sam, as the kind of the topics. Kind of give us some kind of example of the range of. You don't necessarily need to name names, but you can do in terms of range of people that you tend to talk to for the magazine and interview.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so varied. The way that I kind of break it down now in the simplest term is it's all content either helps property investors either save money or make money in property. So what's that look like? It can be things like tax effectively structuring your property portfolio, and the best ways to do that for inheritance tax and that kind of things. It can be content around raising finance, finding deals, putting deals together, managing difficult tenants, the common errors that people make and the common errors they make when hiring builders and contractors and how to avoid those. So it's really varied topics. And then one of the things that we specialise in is we do tell people stories quite often. We've had incredible people in the magazine that have gone from, poverty and extreme circumstances into building multi-million pound property portfolios and telling the sort of the good, the bad and the ugly of that story and how they actually managed to do it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, mindset is so important, isn't it, in business
Yeah.
and in investing. So to have that, I think, is super inspirational. Fantastic. And you also host the Blue Bricks Awards as well, don't you? You do that again this year?
Yeah, so we did the Blue Bricks Awards, 250 people hired at a castle in Chester, which was unbelievable. We're not doing another award ceremony in 2025, but I have just booked for 2026. So there is a new awards coming. I will be doing the announcement soon, and it's going to be bigger and even more madder than the first one.
Awesome. That sounds something to look forward to. Fantastic. So, Uh, so Sam has taught at I do an online conference a couple of times a year on commercial property, and Sam has taught at one of those conferences, and gave a super high value talk about working. So some lessons that you've learned, and also that you've learned from people you've interviewed for the magazine, Sam, in terms of um, working with private finance, really, because that's kind of what we're going to major on for this podcast episode. And you've spoken to angel investors, and you've worked for private equity. So, what do you think some of the biggest lessons are for people listening to this if they're looking to raise private finance for their commercial property purchase, but for any kind of property purchases?
Yeah, I think the first lesson is one that sort of came to me recently. I'll tell a few sort of parables to go with this so people understand what I'm saying. So I was at a business networking event a couple of weeks back. The sort of concept of the event was about sort of buying businesses really. But more about that business growth and that kind of thing. Now, the gentleman that ran this event, he attracts higher tier business owners, people that are have successful businesses that are looking to grow and scale. That's kind of his bag. And I was at this event and I was full of cold, unfortunately. So I just kind of sat quietly in the corner and tried to enjoy as much of it as I could. But I still sort of sat there trying not to die. I was listening on a few people's conversations. And one of the conversations I actively overheard was a guy going, "Yeah, we're turning over about 3 million a year. I've saved up a pot of cash. I don't know what to do with it now. I'm thinking of investing it in property." And these conversations were going on openly because people were saying, "Yeah, I've just got to 1 million turnover. We're looking to buy a business. We've got 200 grand in the bank. We don't know what to do." And like I said, these conversations were happening openly. And that kind of struck a chord with me that when you see people that walking around saying, "I want investors, I want people to invest in my deals," and they go to these £20 networking events on a Tuesday night, that's probably not going to be the place they're going to find those people. Actually, these big business networking events that are put together for successful and established businesses is probably the best place to go. Now, quick caveat to that, I run a networking event. Um, on a Monday night. So I'm not downplaying anyone that runs these events or saying there's no value in them. That's the opposite of what I'm saying. I think they're fantastic events for meeting people, getting knowledge, getting experience, creating relationships, and you can meet investors there. But I'm just saying thinking outside the box can sometimes be quite helpful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And meeting investors that maybe, because I think if you go to property networking events, sometimes a little bit of knowledge is quite dangerous. And I think, I think meeting people who don't know about property and want to partner with somebody perhaps who does can be a really, like, from both sides, can be a really valuable partnership as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you went to that event, you would be the expert in the room. Um, and I think that's what it's about. It's about sort of being the expert that people can rely on as opposed to being in a room full of other property experts.
Yeah. And where can you find those kind of events in your experience, Sam? Kind of, are they openly advertised, or is the kind of networks that you can become part of?
Yeah, openly advertise, look for people that run events that are credible and established and are more business sort of focused. So you've got people like Alfie Best, you've got people like James Sinclair. Those are two that pop to my mind. There will be more. I would start following and looking at those kinds of people and seeing what events are either talking at or running themselves because the likelihood is, the people going to those events. It's about I call it creating your investor avatar, but creating your customer avatar in business. My events do really well because I have a very, very deep understanding of my audience and what they want. And that means that whenever I do something, people are drawn to it because I've already thought about it. And I think it's the same with investors or any kind of customer for a business is think about the person that you want to work with. Are they a high net worth individual? Are they working a corporate career? What problems have they got? What solutions are they looking for? And when you have a clear idea of this person, you can start to have a clear idea of where they're hanging out, so to speak. And the places that, if you go, they're a business owner that's turning over 2 million. What are they doing? Well, they're probably following someone like James Sinclair so they can learn how to grow even more. And it's just sort of reverse engineering it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think as well, like when you actually meet those kind of people, an understanding of what they're looking for as well is really important. Like that two ears, one mouth analogy in terms
Yeah.
of I think there's a tendency for investors to kind of be on transmit in terms of, and I'm being massively generalistic here, obviously, but in terms of what they're doing and everything. But actually, um, every business owner that I've met that's got some money, or investor that I've met, there's certain things that they're particularly interested in. So, for example, they might be particularly interested in net zero, and actually, they would actually be happy with a lower interest rate because the scheme that they're investing in has got net zero credentials. Or they might want to do a lend and learn, and again, would pay a lower interest rate to kind of do a lend and learn type scenario. And I think if you rush in too quickly when you start having those conversations, you can almost kind of lose, well, you probably lose the kind of deal potentially, but also kind of the nuances of what investors are looking for.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's all about what the person wants, whether that's, security and you're not going to get a safe investment, but an investment that's relatively safe. So, for example, they might want a first charge, or they might want charges over other properties that you own. Or it might be that the person's looking for a much higher return, or it might be like you say, they're investing in the project because they're interested in it and they actually want to have a positive difference. But sitting down and actually getting to know people, I think, is where it's at, rather than just sort of blanketing a 12% annual return.
Yeah, for sure. I think if you're resorting to putting an advert on Facebook, you're probably not approaching it right in terms of finding
Yeah.
investors. And you,
Yeah, I've invested in a couple of people, or smaller investments, nothing major. And the way that they structured it that I really liked was it wasn't just an annual return, it was an annual return with an amount paid back every single month. And I quite like that because what's important to me is cash flow. And that actually allowed me to have a little bit more cash flow every single month. So I think, again, just that example of figuring out what the other person wants and structuring something around them will get you a lot further.
yeah, for sure. And you've interviewed, some quite high profile angel investors for your magazine.
Yeah.
Um, what kind of, from their perspective, what are they kind of looking for from somebody that they're investing in?
Yeah, I'll give you some direct extracts from. We interviewed Helen Chorley, who's quite prolific in the industry, angel investor. She's an incredible lady, an absolute powerhouse. And I sort of asked Helen this exact question. And a few interesting things came back. I mean, one of the big things is obviously people invest in people. It's not so much about how good the deal is, though that's important. What angel investors look for is a person they can trust to oversee that deal. And more importantly, a person that if something goes wrong in the deal is going to have the integrity to pull it around and turn it around and not just run away. Angel investors want to see someone who treats other people's money with as much, if not more, value than they treat their own. And actually, terms like OPM, other people's money, pisses off a lot of angel investors because it makes it sound so flippant when you're borrowing substantial amounts of money. The other thing that Helen said look for is obviously the team around people. So have they got a good builder, a good architect, a good mentor, a reputable mentor if they're newer to the industry. And what I found quite interesting was relationships. So investors look for relationships. So marriages, remote romantic relationships, long-term friendships, business partnerships. If you've been employed, long-term employment. And I didn't understand it at first, but it's a psychology thing. Basically, if someone struggles to maintain and keep relationships, it's a big red flag about that person because why is it that people are only with them for a few months before departing? So angel investors like to see that security there. And I've been stung by someone who actually, if I'd have paid attention at those red flags, it would never have happened.
This episode is brought to you by Bond Finance Limited, your trusted partner for commercial property mortgage solutions. Are you an experienced residential property investor about to diversify into commercial property, looking for funding options? Bond Finance can help. Whether you're planning to expand, refinance, or make a major property investment, Bond Finance provides expert advice with access to a wide range of lenders, from high street to specialist. Book a free discovery session today to explore how we can tailor commercial funding solutions to your unique investment strategy. Visit www.bondfinanceltd.co.uk and take the next step in your commercial finance journey.
Yeah, I love that one. It's so smart because that is absolutely true. I'm thinking about to maybe relationships haven't quite worked as well for me in business, and yeah, that is probably quite a decent red flag actually. Um, and you know the biggest I think the biggest lesson that I've learned when I mean I've got a number of JV partnerships. I've only got a very limited amount of investment now. You know, in the scheme of things. But I do have a number of JVs and continue to run JVs, and I really like JVs because you know, kind of I just like working with people more than anything. But and some of those JVs I bring the money, some JVs you know work with somebody else, but there's always some skin in the game from all of us. But I think kind of the number one lesson that I've learned in that space is shared values for me
Yeah.
is that you know when I've really bothered to get to know somebody, and you know it's not just chasing the money, it's kind of really understanding where the other person's coming out, you know, meeting, as you say, like meeting their family, meeting, you know, understanding, talking about scenarios that might be a bit uncomfortable actually on day one, like what happens if this fails, you know, what would happen, you know, what are our different exits on this property or whatever it might be. And seeing their reaction to it can tell you a lot about a person. And I would say most of the time, that has been a fantastic kind of bellwether as to whether something's going to work well. What's your kind of view on that kind of, you know, values and whether you get on with somebody and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think values are the most important thing. And I think, unfortunately, people confuse friendship with values, and it's not necessarily the same. You know, people think because someone's the best friend, they're going to be a great business partner. And it's not necessarily about two people being the same. It's more about if two people are on the same path and believe in the same thing, and have the same morals and values and ethos. If one of you is doing a deal because you want to make loads of money and buy a Lamborghini, and the other person is doing a deal because they want to make a positive impact on the local community, that really doesn't matter because you're both moving towards the same outcome, which is the completion of the deal. So I think yes, that's important, and meeting people's families and seeing that there's a human being there is also really important.
Yeah, I love that point about the friendship. It's such a good one, but I think also that can really be flipped on its head in that. And I made this mistake when I was very openly admit I you know I kind of I've done this, that you go into partnership with somebody who's just like you. And
Yeah,
sometimes that's absolutely the wrong thing to do because, you know, I don't know whether people have done wealth dynamics or, you know, kind of Myers-Briggs. There's loads of different kind of profiling tools, aren't they? And whilst kind of I don't really like the idea of being people put in a box, when I've done wealth dynamics and I've seen my profile and I see the people that I work really well with, they're very different to me. We bring different strengths to the party, and you know, it just works because of that.
yeah, 100%. You know, the best partnerships I've seen are always between two people who, if you met them in a room, you wouldn't put them together at all. And it works brilliantly because they sort of cover each other's weaknesses.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. That's brilliant. So, in terms of yeah, kind of other lessons, Sam, anything else that you kind of want to share with us in terms of what you've learned personally working the private equity or with you know with people that you've interviewed? Because I always love some of the points you bring up when we do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think the main thing I've learned is just from sort of the world of private equity and what I've seen and what people have said in the magazine, it's more about building relationships with people and building those relationships over time and demonstrating credibility, you know, showing that you're out there, showing that you have got relationships with people, that you've got friendships, that you're actively growing your knowledge, that you're actually doing stuff in the industry. It's a big thing. One of the sort of warning signs I've seen a few people bring up to me privately is when someone starts to act desperate online. So you might have seen it. Like I've seen people at saying that they're doing hundreds of deals a year, and then they're suddenly online going, I need 16 grand by tomorrow. And I'm like, whoa, there's something there that doesn't add up.
Mm.
So I think it's being careful of not seeming desperate, prioritizing relationships over the finance. And I think eventually the rest comes, and then just putting yourself in circles where you're going to meet people who are the types of people that you want to work with, whether they be business owners, high net worth individuals, people with corporate careers, people that have inherited wealth, whatever that might be. And then lastly, a quite common piece of advice, tell everyone what you do, because you might get instructions through people that way as well.
Yeah, brilliant tips. And that question, who do you know who? Who do you know
Mm-hmm.
would be interested in, talking to me about, some of the property investment stuff I'm doing and maybe getting a return from it or whatever it might be, is so valuable, isn't it? Because you're not overtly asking anybody for money, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly different but similar. We've been looking to partner with an insurance broker with Bluebricks for a while in terms of advertising. And it's been on my to-do list for a while, but I've got caught up with other things. Then one week, I thought, right, I need to just find an insurance broker and get this done. I put in the Bluebricks WhatsApp chat for the Leeds event. Does anyone know anyone? Someone immediately connected me with a person, and by the end of the day, we had a new insurance broker advertising in the magazine with literally one message in a group chat now, even though I already know the person who recommended the insurance broker and I've got a great relationship with them, had I have not asked that person and said, I'm looking for an insurance broker, they would never have referred the person through. So don't assume that just because someone knows you're in property, you're going to get instructions. I would actively remind people and prompt people and say, do you know anyone who is looking to invest, or do you know anyone who's inherited some money lately, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, one exercise that I get my board clients to do is to and some do it and some don't, but largely the ones who've done it, I've had some amazing feedback from it, and it's so simple. You basically get a notebook and you write the names of everybody you know, or it doesn't have to be like close people, but everybody you know that you think has got some money or may be interested in investing, or just everybody you know. And it's one of those things that you write down, like, depends how popular you are and how much you go out, but like, you might write 30 or 50 names or 10 or whatever your number is, and then it's kind of like that reticular activating system in your brain carries on later and then goes, oh yeah, what about them? And oh yeah, actually about them. And suddenly, before you know it, I mean, one of my clients did it not so long ago, and he said, like, he got to like 150 names, and he was like, I think he started off on like 15. um
Yeah, well,
and he got to 150 names, and then what he did was, he didn't just kind of leave it at that. What he did was then he like produced like a little newsletter about some of his investing and what he's doing, and then the one, sent it out, just, I've just exchanged on this property, and then people would contact him and say, actually, you know what, can we have a chat? And then he likes to combine exercise with it, so he goes for a walk with them, and he kind of chats to them, and he's just, yeah, he's created this whole new pool of investors just literally from one really simple exercise, which I think is super powerful.
yeah, absolutely. I think you're completely right there. Um, and like he's doing, clearly taking time out with those people as well, rather than just saying, I'll send you a contract and a brochure.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I like your last time we did this, take one, when we talked about, when you were saying about Helen, what Helen Chorley was saying about people's skin in the game. You could tell us a little bit more about
Oh, yeah, thanks, Sis. I'm glad you reminded me of that one. I thought I was doing well remembering everything. Yeah,
that.
so one of the things that came up with Helen, which I thought was really, really interesting, is we sort of asked about skin in the game and would you invest 100% in someone's property deal? And obviously Helen said that it's rare that they do that, especially if it's someone that they've not worked with before. And as the like angel investors typically like someone to have skin in the game. And I said, okay, well, what does skin in the game look like? Is it 50 grand, 100 grand, and 50% of the total investment? And what Helen said was, it's not about how much money the person invests, it's about what that money means to them. So basically, if you've got a property deal and you're raising finance, and let's say you only have £20,000 in the bank, but you're willing to invest £18,000, that's highly attractive to an angel investor, because it means that the majority of your wealth is in that deal. So if it goes wrong, you're highly motivated to turn it around because you've got a lot of your own personal money in there. It's not about having hundreds of thousands of pounds to invest. And that's the thing. And that was the thing that came up quite often is, people say, I'm putting in the time, you're putting in the money. A lot of angel investors sort of aren't really up for that just because, again, it's all right saying you're putting the time in, but the moment things get stressful, um, and the moment deadlines have been missed, that's when sort of the real character of a person show. And if that person's got money in that deal, they're going to want to turn it around.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a great tip, I think. Um, and I've got clients who are, kind of providing the service. So they're doing like sweat equity. But they tend to always put at least, even if it's 5 grand, they always tend to put something in. So I think that's a great tip. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Sam. I'm so glad we managed to get this done again because there's some valuable tips there, and I think it kind of turns on a head on the head of what a lot of people think about when they look for investors. I think that kind of planning this well ahead so that when you do find a great deal, I know there's the old adage find a deal and the investment will come. And I definitely believe in that, by the way, because I think that's absolutely true. Like, some of the really high net worth and family office type investors that I occasionally work with, they want a deal. They want deals to be able to look at, to be able to assess. But to build those relationships upstream so that when you do have a deal, you can just go to them and all that kind of relationship piece has almost been done, and then you've got a deal that then they're like, oh yeah, that's great. There's nothing more powerful than that, I think, as in terms of working with people. So thank you so much
Yeah.
for sharing your insights.
No, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Susie. I've enjoyed it just as much a second time. And obviously we've got you speaking at our event later this month, and I know you're in an upcoming issue of Blue Bricks too, so I'm looking forward to that.
Brilliant. Yeah, great. Thanks, Sam. And just tell us what's next for Blue Bricks. Kind of how can people get hold of copies of the magazine? Kind of tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots going on, and every time I'm on the phone to people now, people always tell me how sort of broken I sound, so it's shining through. Well, I'm launching a new business at the moment, which is a tech business that will be plugging into Blue Bricks. We're actually launching a new magazine as well. Um, More information on that soon. On top of that, we're also doing the second award, which is coming soon, which I'm really looking forward to. And we're also launching a new product within Blue Bricks magazine that's going to include a lot of digital elements and in-person elements that people have been asking for. And I've just got word last week that we're also putting together a bit of a mini in-person sort of business and property conference in October time. So as you can tell, as I'm explaining more and more, I'm sort of deflating. But yeah, there's lots keeping me lots keeping me busy at the moment. And thankfully, I've got a good team around me to help put it all together.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations with all of that and all the very
Cheers.
best for it. I'm sure it's going to be a huge success. So yeah, do come back on when all this is launched and tell us a bit more about it. And we'd love to hear. But for the meantime, thank you so much for joining me today.
No, my pleasure. Thank you, Susie.
And we'll share Sam's details in the notes so that you can get a hold of Sam and Blue Bricks Direct. So yeah, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. See you soon.
See you soon.